Hello Canada, welcome back to another edition of the Canadian Citizen Journal. I'm your host, alias Tagai. Well, Alberta has announced that they are setting up a program to help deal with trade in the United States. We're going to deal with Daniel Smith's new release, I guess. This is great. This is it's a really good idea. Especially with the amount of trade that goes on between those two provinces, and really Saskatchewan should fall right in line with this as well. We're also going to deal with a few more stats that are coming out. The polls are climbing more and more in the favor of Western separation, especially in Alberta. I've been waiting. There hasn't really been a good poll done in Saskatchewan yet. When there is, I will be sure to post it. We're also going to talk about, obviously, the government trying to shut down because of mismanagement of money and funds, and really bad communication and abuse through the unions as well. This is a domino effect with the Mail, Canada Post. We're going to listen to a little bit of this interview because the representative from the union actually, he's trying to put truth out there. But he's not really doing a very good job of it, especially since really the union itself has been a major demise on the profitability of that business. I mean, when you come out to like a lot of other jobs, especially if you're dealing like oil field, I know I did it for years. You work 12 hours a day. You don't get the time off, EDAs, and all the rest of that. You're in it. You're in it to win it. That's dedication to work, and through that you get phenomenal wages and the benefits that come with it. So again, a little bit of a different, that's kind of my idea. Let me know how you feel in the comments. We're also going to talk about this cricket farm that has gone bankrupt with money from the government. Yes, the SDTC fund. This is more of your tax dollars going flushing down the toilet. And the truth is, Honda, when Reuters put out that report and everybody was denying and saying it was fake, including Rob Ford, and I argued with him even then, previous episodes, I said, no, they're gone. They're gone. They're leaving. Nobody's going to build cars in a place that's going to ban them in 5 years. It's just completely redundant. It's bad business. And EVs, the whole EV market is plummeting. There is no market for it, especially in Canada. And this is another link that actually goes to why Canada Post is so far in debt, is because they were trying to convert over their fleet from pressure and influence of the Liberal government. And they've got cars sitting everywhere that aren't being used, that can't be used, that are frozen, that don't work, etc. Bad business management, and half of Canada re-elected the same party back into power. And then we're going to deal on a few other little things. Let's get started with Daniel Smith, the greatest premier there is in Canada. This is a great announcement.
But we're here today to announce a new initiative aimed at strengthening our understanding of the Canada-US relationship. It's no secret that our relationship has hit a rocky patch these past few months. And while tensions have ridden high, let us be clear, this relationship is far from over. We are still neighbors, and for much of our history, we have been the best of friends too. Our two nations share a unique decades-long bond that has delivered mutual benefits for generations. Our geography links us together like few other nations in history. In fact, our two nations span more than 80% of the North American continent. We have closely integrated economies and a warm sense of kinship between our populations. And over the years, we've collaborated on everything from missile defense to space exploration, wildfires, Arctic research, and invasive species management. Here in Alberta, for example, the U.S. is by far our biggest trading partner, and Alberta plays a major role in supplying U.S. energy needs. The way we see it, any rift between us is a huge loss for both countries. If things continue to change between Canada and the United States, we want it to be changed for the better, because our continued friendship and cooperation will create lasting prosperity for both nations. But we can't sit around waiting for this to happen. We must take action. And that's why our government is investing $6.5 million over the next 3 years to support the new North America initiative led by the University of Calgary's School of Public Policy. This initiative will bring together some of the brightest minds in academia, government, and the private sector to investigate developments in the relationship between Canada and the United States. This effort will spark collaboration across Alberta's universities and a number of leading American universities to develop policy solutions that respond to the new reality. To me, talking to each other and working with each other is the only way we're going to figure things out. This is the constructive and diplomatic approach that I've been calling for since this whole problem began. And these recent bumps in the road are a good reason to take a close look at the relationship to figure out what's working and what we can do to improve it, which is exactly what the new North America initiative aims to do. For countries as closely connected as we are, it's in both our national interest to repair things as quickly as we can, because our nations are better off when we're working together. And there's so much to gain from strengthening the relationship between Canada and the United States. We are peaceful neighbors with shared values and a deep mutual respect. We have economies that complement each other perfectly. We have everything we need to secure our mutual energy supply indefinitely and achieve North American energy dominance. And if we can get it right, the future of our continent looks very bright indeed. And the new North America initiative will help to bring that future into focus. I look forward to seeing the innovative solutions these universities will come up with as this important work progresses over the next 3 years. Thank you. And with that, I'd like to invite...
Okay, I am just going to speed ahead to the Q&A. Now, this is, by the way, I think this is a fabulous idea. And it'll help, especially with the way that they're purging the woke socialism out of their universities down south. It'll be a great collaboration to fix the problems that we have here as well in Canada. As you know, well, if you're watched my channel, the major problem that we have is we have way too many socialist professors and teachers. There should be a law against promoting it. Now, I say that with a little bit of, because I do believe in free speech. But socialism has never worked, and to try and convince a student of one way or the other when it comes to something so destructive to humanity and mankind, there has to be a fine line. And we've already seen it in schools where teachers are at a young age asking questions and marking off, if kids are conservative, that they're evil. This has to stop. This has to stop. Yeah, so I think this is a great idea. Let me know how you feel in the comments. We're going to move on here to the Q&A. This question, this is a fabulous question. I don't think I got the fulfillment from the answer that I was looking for, but she did do a pretty darn good job.
This is a high microphone. Hi, Premier. I'm Carolina Vendano with the Epoch Times. I've heard you have said previously that Chinese tariffs are targeted and directed at splitting our country up. So I'm wondering if you can explain how you think these tariffs are pitting one region against the other in Canada.
Sure. I should let the audience know this normally happens with media. They don't always ask on-topic questions, so what we have with the free press. So just hope you'll indulge that for a moment. Well, I can tell you that this is, again, maybe going back to the objects of this new institute that we're starting off, is that obviously the Americans have grave concern that they're losing the economic battle and the AI battle with China. And so I think that the Americans, as part of a condition to getting access to their market, are increasingly going to be asking for restrictions on how much trade we do with China. We've already seen it with steel and aluminum tariffs. Part of that was that we don't want steel and aluminum being dumped into our market, having some kind of minor upgrade and then being dumped into the American market. That was one of the things that the US president raised in his first term, and clearly still believes that that's a problem. Same with autos. When the Americans put a 100% tariff on electric vehicles, our government responded in the same manner, again, so that there wasn't some dumping that happened into Canada that then undermined the U.S. auto industry. The unfortunate consequence of that is that we now have a 100% tariff on vehicles nobody really wants in Canada, because I don't think there's a massive amount of demand for Chinese electric vehicles, to protect an electric vehicle industry in Canada that doesn't yet exist because those investments haven't been made. And the consequence of that is the Chinese retaliation has been against the products everybody does want, which is pork and canola. And I can only interpret that as the Chinese understand the divisions in our country. They understand that if you're going to retaliate and create maximum pressure, you do it by pitting one region against the other. So it's why Wab Kinew, Scott Moe, and myself have all asked the federal government if they could try to figure out a pathway that we would be able to normalize relationships with China again, because it does have a massive impact on our agricultural communities. But I do think it's whenever you get into these kind of trade wars, countries make decisions about how they're going to exert maximum pressure, and I would say that that's what I'm observing with China's retaliation on Canada.
And of course, mainstream, the legacy media, is not talking about this. They will slowly talk about it a little bit more and more as the separation issue starts to really explode, which they're starting to realize their incompetence and purposeful abuse of their power to keep the Liberals in government is what's the main divider within our nation. It's because of them not bringing to attention out east the destruction that is happening to not only the West, but to the East and West Coast fishing industries, which is a much larger, over 10 times larger industry that pays for Canada to keep rolling out the free programs. They've said nothing about this. They hit on it every now and then, but it's usually at the 10 o'clock news, when nobody's really watching, mid-morning. They'll throw a little segment in there, or they'll do what they normally do, and they'll bring it up in a sentence and then not complete in any part of the conversation after the effects that it's having on Canada as a whole. Again, this is the 97% of Canada that has no say in the electoral process. So, yeah, what China has done is brilliant. They're very good at what they do.
Thank you, Premier. And my follow-up question is, what do you think is the stance Ottawa should take toward Beijing now that we have a new federal government? Taking into account that first, so what are deemed as unfair trade practices by China, human rights abuses, and also interference in our democracy. As we saw during the federal election, there was this information campaign targeting Carney, influencing Chinese Canadians, his opinion on Carney, and also targeting the Tory candidate Joe Tai.
I'll quote maybe Michael Spavor, who was quoted today saying our relationship with China will never be the same again after what happened to Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig. And I think that is a part of the reason why we haven't fully normalized relations with China again. They are an enormous economy, quite obviously, and Alberta has a huge trade relationship with China. We are not as huge as with the United States. United States and Alberta, we share $188 billion worth of cross-border trade. China, it's $10 billion.
I want to dabble on the two Michael thing. Again, previous episodes, the Liberals were purposely using. There were Liberals that were in communication with China, letting them know whether they should release them or shouldn't release them in order to garner votes. And the propaganda media was being used by the Liberals to favor this. There's piles of this explosive information, again, not only on my previous episodes, but through Sam Cooper. And because of the NDP's ignorance and really being liberals in the end, they kept shutting down the committees. And then when the election interference came forward, which again, previous episodes, it was all a cover-up. We may never actually find out now how deeply embedded the Liberal Party was during that Two Michael affair. Now, this had to do with a Huawei employee. The States was involved. There was a lot of miscommunication. There was a mass amount of propaganda, all in favor of the Liberals, who theoretically, looking at the evidence, were mostly responsible for the Two Michaels being there as long as they were. It could have ended a lot earlier, but they were using it as a wedge in order to garner votes to stay in power. Kind of like what happened with the last election, and that's what this Asian reporter is talking about. And again, media, mainstream legacy did nothing. They never talked about any of it. The Paul Chen story that I broke with, 2 or 3 other people at the time, thanks to Sam Cooper's research, this was this was a huge part. One seat with a government so with two parties being so tight on who is going to take over and win is a huge percentage. They can't use that, well, it's one seat. One seat makes a big difference, especially in a minority government. In fact, with the majority, if they end up pulling off, if the Liberals end up pulling off a majority, that one seat could have meant a majority or a minority. Or even better, it could have meant that one seat going to the opposition party, in this case being the Conservatives, would have given them that much more power to topple the government and to hold them to account in committee. People aren't aware of the power of one seat. One seat in a democracy is a huge tool. Moving on.
So still significant, and a lot of it centered around food. But to be frank, I think we're going to have this conversation with the Americans, because what I'm observing in the language that I'm seeing from the U.S. president is he's saying, if you want to be treated like historically with a tariff-free relationship, there's going to be some conditions attached to that with the relationship we have with China. I think what I have observed in many of the comments that I've seen from the president and his secretaries, particularly Doug Burgum, is they're very worried about China winning the AI data race, and because artificial intelligence is manufacturing intelligence, and they are building electricity at a greater rate than we are to be able to support what that electricity demand is going to be for AI.
And that's all coal plants, by the way, which we could have, like I said again in previous episodes, we could have cut global emissions in the last 10 years by 6.5%. Instead, they've gone up steadily and actually hit a fever pitch, because a lot of the green initiatives, the windmills and solar panels that were being pushed on a lot of Europe, are failing. They're failing big time. They can't keep up to the demand. A lot of these companies have fired up their coal plants again and are now fighting to try and get the Saskatchewan invented, Canadian made clean coal carbon capture, which our government tried to stomp out of existence. Everything about this Liberal Party has no sense at all, which tells you they're only in it to profit themselves and their shareholders. They don't care about you. They don't care.
And they understand that if China gets the dominance over North America, it's going to really change the way the world operates. So I'm sensitive to understanding what some of the American objectives are, and I don't think I can answer that today. Maybe you can put it to the panel that's going to be discussing it after this conference, or after this announcement, because those are exactly the reason why we are establishing this new North America a project. This is a different kind of conversation than we might have had a year ago, but it's a very important one for us to have to understand how do we maintain the preferential relationship with the United States, still find new markets, but find the balance so that we don't have to sacrifice one over the other.
Thank you. And we're almost at time.
And Canada is so perfect to be part of this AI revolution. And I've actually been mentioning this for a long time, probably close to 10 years now, especially since AI, that was about 8 years ago when AI started to really take off and it was in every newsreel. The amount of energy it takes in order to run these data centers in AI, most of the energy is through cooling. Well, Canada has the perfect climate for that. If there was ever a way to take people out of poverty in our northern areas and to incorporate and give the indigenous nations up there not only a seat at a table, but a fundamental product that is going to change the world, and to have them trained and be the leaders in that, with their climate being the biggest benefactor, we could have been light years ahead. But instead, our government was too busy trying to give tax dollars out to build EVs on an impossible dream that would never happen. And since the beginning, anybody who knew anything was already arguing, what are you doing trying to put EVs in Canada? This makes sense in a very small country. You could kind of get away with it in a warmer climate, but by the time you start running transmission lines, there isn't enough copper on the planet right now. If you stripped all the copper off the planet and brought it to Canada, you still couldn't make us 100% EV compatible. The whole dream is what it is. It's a dream. It's a pipe dream. And because they've been capping our resource center, nobody's ever even thought about coming to Canada, because why would they come to Canada? They need energy. They need huge, vast amount of energy in order to run these data centers. Now, Kevin O'Leary has signed an agreement with Alberta. He is actually going to create a data center. They're taking an entire area. They're going to build a village about it. I'm going to dabble a little bit more on this on another episode. We'll just continue on with the questions.
Your first question comes from the line of Rick Bell with Post Media. Please go ahead.
Good morning, Premier. I know you met with Prime Minister Carney 2 weeks ago, and you were quite positive, and I know you're hoping for the best, and I know you're an optimist at heart, but actions have consequences and inactions have consequences. You have 9 demands on the table that you would like to see dealt with in the next 6 months. My question is, what do you believe the reaction of Albertans, not the rest of the country, just Albertans, what the reaction of Albertans will be if those demands that you have on the table are not met? In other words, what is the risk for the Prime Minister, for the Canadian government, for Canada? What is the risk?
She's nervous. She's doing the hand thing and she's swallowing. These are hard questions for her to answer. She is definitely not a separatist. She really wants Alberta to stay in Canada, but she knows deep down that if this doesn't go through, the only path with any type of hope for any of the citizens, especially in her province, and this goes for Saskatchewan as well, and to be honest, BC, is separation. She knows it deep down in her heart, but she's fighting it tooth and nail, and she does not like she doesn't like being uncomfortable. That these questions keep coming up over and over and over again. But I give her credit; she's the best damn premier in Canada.
Risk of not dealing with those 9 issues and following through and getting that new deal that you want.
Maybe I'll put it in practical terms, because I know that the federal government is seeking input on projects that might qualify for a fast track process. And so that's what I'll be looking at as an indicator of whether the federal government is going to meet us partway. because the project I've put on the table is a revival of the Northern Gateway pipeline to Port of Prince Rupert. Because when you look at that particular route, it gives us access to all the Asian markets and gives us a preference of being able to get our product there over any country in the world. We've got 8 days or 10 days to South Korea and to Tokyo, and then going on to the east coast of India and all the other nations in between. And so being able to create new markets there with additional export of bitumen is going to be incredibly important. Some of the biggest refinery in the world of heavy oil is in India. There are 4 Korean refineries that have already received shipments of Trans Mountain heavy oil, and they like it, and they want more of it. So what does that mean? Well, they'd have to have a fast track process to approve that pipeline, so we're not waiting 10 years, and so that it is de-risked to a point where somebody will come along and build it. And if you're going to have that pipeline end at Port of Prince Rupert, well, you're going to have to do a carve out on the tanker ban so that we can load it onto a boat and get it overseas. And if you do all of that, then you're going to probably have to take the ties off of our energy industry to talk about how we're going to reduce our emissions without facing criminal penalty, because right now that's called greenwashing under their Bill 59. And to be able to get support, we'd have to talk about the Pathways Project and how we might be able to decarbonize the production. And that means no emissions caps, because if you want to increase your export, you can't have an emissions cap which acts as a production cap. And on top of that, we have a framework for how our carbon emissions are priced, which we've been doing since 2007. And we've heard you can't go above $100, otherwise it's going to create an economic environment where people won't invest here. So that means they can't layer on their own carbon tax regime. So those are like 5 things right there that they would signal to me that they are serious about changing things if they agreed to the Port of Prince Rupert revival of Northern Gateway or something like it. So that's what I'm looking for.
And
boy, she sure knows her business. Gotta give her credit, man. She knows her business.
And I'm sure most Albertans are looking for that too. If that doesn't happen, if Alberta's heart gets broken yet again, and you've seen this movie many times, and you've heard people speak very positively, and then in the end nothing happens. What is the risk if you want to national unity? If we can't get that, which is, as you say, a very specific, hands-on project. If that can't be accepted, and what goes along with that. What do you think the reaction of Albertans will be to that if it is rejected? And what do you think that means for Confederation?
Well, let me answer in a very practical way again, because I know that there are several projects that are being floated to the U.S. Secretary of the Interior, Doug Burgum, that would get more of our oil and gas out of Alberta and into the United States. And then I would say to my colleagues again, what do you think it's going to do to national unity that it's easier for Alberta to get its product traded to the United States than through British Columbia or through Eastern Canada? And then we're going to have that conversation, because that is the problem that we have right now, is that we all have stronger ties north-south than we do east-west. And so I'll be looking at that as an indicator of whether words were said just to win elections, or whether words were said because we're serious about trading with each other and supporting each other. And we're serious about finding new markets for our products. So I think we'll know pretty soon, Rick, about whether or not we're going to have to switch our focus to continuing to expand our relationship with the United States, or whether our neighbors are going to be serious about not just having us on Team Canada, but Team Canada being on Team Alberta.
Wow. She is absolutely fabulous. Now, this is the latest poll that just came out. There's a very slim majority of Albertans that would prefer to stay in Canada. They have like a 4% lead. And once again, these polls there's a lot of people sitting on the fence. So the fence sitters are included on the stay in Canada. The undecided, probably Canada side of it. These numbers are growing faster and faster. And just like Premier Daniel Smith said, if the government doesn't get their crap together, this is going to be reversed very quickly. In other words, shovels better be in the ground within a year, or it's over. And I can guarantee you one thing. There is very few people in Saskatchewan that would remain in Canada if Alberta left. Saskatchewan and Alberta are the closest of siblings out of all the provinces there are. There are no two other provinces in Canada that align as tightly as Saskatchewan and Alberta do. Not only are the industries almost identical, the way of life is almost identical. Everything. You can transition from one province to the next and nobody knows the difference other than seeing your license plate. You talk the same, you act the same, you're going to the same stores, you're buying the same products, you're living very, very you're the same. You're the same. No other provinces are like that. And like I said, I've been across Canada so many times. I couldn't tell you how many. And I've worked in every single province. Except for Quebec. We're not allowed to work there. We were never allowed to work there. So we would drive through. I have stopped there and spent a lot of time there, but not work there for long periods because of the way that they don't like anybody else in Canada but themselves. So Stockwell Day has come out. And Stockwell Day says he backs the Alberta vote on separation and really cautions the Conservatives about a split. And this is a big worry that a lot of people have. And this is actually why there's only one sitting MP who is a separatist in Alberta, because people know the fear of the NDP winning scares the bejesus out of everybody, especially after what Rachel Notley, that horrible, horrible person, did to the province and to the people. That is one of the nastiest socialist, ignorant, vile people to ever sit in that type of a position of power. She was horrible. Her whole party, mean, ignorant socialists, horrible people. Nenshi's right in there too. He's just so ignorant. Now the article. Former federal cabinet minister Stockwell Day says Albertans should go to the polls to decide whether the province should break away from Canada, arguing the referendum would force the rest of the country to confront Western alienation. The former Canadian Alliance leader said he shares separatist frustration, but doubted they could clear the 50% needed to win in a referendum. I don't think they'll get there. But people deserve the chance to register how aggrieved they are, said Day. Day warned the federal Conservative Party that a rising Western independent movement could revive the vote splitting that plagued the right before it united in 2003. Premier Daniel Smith's government has tabled a bill allowing citizens to trigger referendums, including on separation, with signatures from 10% of voters. The proposal has drawn fire from Indigenous chiefs who say no ballot can undo treaty rights. Business leaders also worry. Calgary Chamber of Commerce President Deborah Yedlin said even holding a vote would inject uncertainty and chill spending on new projects in both Alberta and the rest of Canada. Day urged Prime Minister Mark Carney to ease tensions by granting Alberta more control over resources and appointing additional Westerners to the cabinet, arguing a stronger Alberta makes a stronger Canada. Now, this is the big factor, and Saskatchewan has to understand this as well. The referendum is a huge deal. Don't go in there with 3 different parties and start vote splitting the cabinet that you have right now. Like I've stated before, Mo is doing a lot of the same things that Daniel Smith is doing. And I'll be reporting on another episode. They've actually taken possession of a old police station and are converting it over for the marshals up in PA, which is our new version of RCMP, our Saskatchewan, our own. This is a huge step which we need to do. Now, you have to have all of the people together voting on the idea first. First, you have to come forward and show that Saskatchewan as a whole, and this goes for Alberta too, that the majority of the people there, 50 plus 1, want to leave. From that moment, it changes the entire voting system. But if you try to elect 2 or 3 little parties, and you've got the Western Independents, and you've got this, and you've got another one, you've divided all the votes up, who do you think is going to end up in power? The minority vote, the socialists, the NDP, the ones who are using this idea of independence because they're too scared to be part of something so great. These are people with no spine who don't like democracy. In fact, they're using this in order to remove democracy by increasing the numbers needed for a referendum. You see, this is how socialist works. Fascism is a terrible disease. Now, we're going to move on. This is the Canada Post issue. I think this guy did a not bad job. There's a lot more information. I could do probably 1 or 2 part episode on this, from the wasted money that they blew on EVs that are sitting, hundreds upon hundreds of them that are sitting unused, which now the batteries and everything are probably shot from going through winters, deader than a doornail. That never really worked or functioned anyways. And again, all of this stems to the federal government. People have to realize that. It's the federal government that says, oh, well, we'll give you an incentive and we're going to force you to do this. And we're going to, so then all of a sudden you got Canada Post spending billions of dollars. And it doesn't help that the people who are running the show are mostly liberals. These people, they just follow in line. Oh, yeah, we'll do that. Hey, free money. And then they blow the rest of the money that they've got on something that is a failed idea right from the get-go. It would never work. It's a solar power flashlight. A lot of good it does to you after an hour of being lost in the forest in Canada and your light goes dead and there's no sun to shine on it. This is the EV market. It's ridiculous. And the EVs was the final blow to this corporation, along with the fact that the government is purposely they're not doing the reports as thoroughly as needed. But they're not doing them because if they do, it exposes that they're the ones responsible for the demise of the Canadian Postal Service. Listen carefully to how he words it.
Mail delivery. That's the recommendation of a report from the Industrial Inquiry Commission. The report was ordered in December by then Labour Minister Steve McKinnon as he ordered an end to the labour dispute. The report is now public and it suggests transformational change at the Crown Corporation. As I mentioned, it recommends ending daily door-to-door letter delivery for individuals, but it does recommend keeping it for businesses. It also suggests lifting the moratoriums on the closure of rural post offices and conversions to community mailboxes. The president and CEO of Canada Post, Doug Ettinger, released a statement that reads in part, "We welcome the report's recommendations and will work with our bargaining agents and our shareholder, the Government of Canada, to address our challenges and secure a sustainable path forward." The newly minted Jobs Minister, Patty Hajdu, also released a statement today saying the report highlights the main issues that are holding up getting to an agreement and offers a way forward. She added, "It's time for everyone to put aside their differences, focus on shared goals, and ensure a strong postal system now and into the future." We did ask both the minister and someone from the Crown Corporation to come on the program today, but both declined our invitation.
Both declined the invitation. It's the same Liberal Party. Nothing's changed.
We are happy, though, to have the Canadian Union of Postal Workers negotiator, Jim Gallant, with us. Thanks for being here once again.
Thanks for having us on.
So I guess the first question is, you're reaction to that report because of what it is saying and what it needs to do, especially that recommendation of ending door-to-door delivery service?
Well, we're disappointed, but not surprised. There's no doubt that the government ordered this report, paid for this report, and likely had some expectations of the report. So we went to this commission, and it looks like what the report does is dismisses everything that the union said, and the hundreds of submissions from municipalities, the public, Indigenous communities, and charities, because the report shows that all of those entities agreed with the union, but the report does not agree with the union. It agrees with the employer.
And it disagrees on some of the key things that you guys were saying going into this, notably that the issues facing Canada Post are the result of mismanagement, or that the current financial situation, I'm quoting from it here, has been manufactured for tactical reasons. They say that that is completely false. What do you say to that?
I say that during the commission, Canada Post provided no evidence of any of their problems. That we were asked to cost things when Canada Post was not, and the commission seems to have relied totally on Canada Post's financial reports, which are audited. There's no doubt of that. But if you go out and buy 10,000 vehicles, that passes the audit because you actually have 10,000 vehicles. The problem is you only needed 1,000 vehicles to run the business that year, and you bought 9,000 to make sure that your money is depleted. You know, at that point there's no money for Christmas gifts, right?
Right. No.
Now, he nailed it. He absolutely nailed it. And the analogy he used the analogy of the EVs. So he knows what's going on. They're getting railroaded because it's all Liberal policy. It's the Liberal government that has completely ruined this postal service. Say goodbye. Goodbye. It'll be sold off, pieced out, minimum wage, non-union, crappy jobs, crappy hours. It'll be profit over people. Because that's how the Liberals, that's what they do. They're a wrecking ball to democracy. They're a wrecking ball to the idea that people deserve a living wage. No. They want you on the social welfare system. That gives them more control. He nailed it. That analogy right there just answered the entire debacle of the final death blow to the Postal Service.
I take your point on that, but it still sides with Canada Post in saying that that their financial situation is not something that they did essentially to manufacture to create this crisis, and that is something that your union has been saying from the get-go. They basically reject that argument out of hand.
They do. The commission rejects that submission of the union, but doesn't investigate Canada Post to do it.
So do you think that this commission was not thorough enough?
This commission wasn't thorough enough, and the union has been saying that from the beginning. A mandate review is what needs to be done when it comes to Canada Post. Mandate reviews have been done in the past, and it allows for public submissions by the union, and it allows for a more thorough investigation of what's going on and what the lay of the land is at that juncture.
But reviews were specifically underlined in this report. They said that there have been a number of reviews. I think it was about 4 in the last 6 to 10 years. And they say another review is not necessary. We are at a tipping point here. Do not take that point that another review isn't necessary because Canada Post is essentially at a fiscal cliff here.
When you look back, it goes back to, in this report, it goes back to some reviews that were done by different boards, and we end up with facts that were in those reports that were wrong. Conference Board of Canada is one of the ones that did a report. Those numbers are not right. It's not that anybody lied. It's just that the numbers in the reports were wrong. So you start with a report that was wrong, and then you build on that report. That's not helpful to the situation. So we need to see what the real lay of the land is, and the report is exactly what we were told was going to be in the report before it started. We heard that these things were going to be in a report, things about part-time employees and things about weekend delivery. We heard that in January before the commission started.
I'm trying to...
So he's absolutely correct. Now, by what I mean by how the union also was half of the screw that threaded into this bad policy is they've been fighting against the boxes. Once the whole online purchasing started to take off, it was the demise to the Postal Service, because we had third-party deliveries trucks, delivery companies that were delivering all of these parcels. People were not using the Canadian Postal Service in that way. They had a peak season, which was Christmas. Other than that, for the most part, they lost like almost 90% of the shipping end of it on parcels, priority mail, and a lot of the documents that were coming, legal documents and stuff, they were done through Pure Lated Courier, and they were done through UPS and all of these other companies that were doing it, and they were doing it a lot more efficiently because of the way they were set up. They were already set up with the new technology, and of course, just a fresh company. But because the union themselves refused to understand that they did need to start, and it's not a matter of firing people, and this is what the head unions were saying at the time. We're not firing people. That's wrong. Blah blah. That's not what they needed to do. This is what the media did in order to get Carney elected with what Poilievre was saying. He wasn't going to go in and just cut and fire a whole bunch of this insane number of federal employees that the Liberal Party have hired in order to create false job numbers. What he was saying is that you just don't hire back as many. You let them fulfill their work term, and when they retire, you don't fill that position. That's all these people needed to do. That's all they needed to do. And within that transition, the Postal Service itself would have slowly lost numbers, yes. The proficiency would have went up. They would have been guaranteed to hold on to more surplus power of the mail, thus the packaging, the larger the documents. But they didn't do that. Instead, they fought against it. And then they hit this precipice. They hit a cliff. And meet that at the same time when the Liberal Party, the party of complete incompetence, with this disgusting, gross idea of carbon neutrality and EVs and this delusional zealot religion that they're part of, while they're robbing everybody blind. It was the combination of the two. So they're just as guilty. And the worst part about it is because both sides have been abusive on both of their ends, when the Liberal Party had come in and pushed through the EVs, and it completely bankrupted them. They had nothing left. And now they've got way too many people. They're still fighting against the boxes. The boxes are the way to go. They're the way to go. They need to start cutting the cost down. People can't afford it. Why? They'll just use UPS, or they'll use somebody else. Mail nowadays is done electronically. Letters have dropped right off. They weren't getting with the times. They were too busy being greedy, worrying about their jobs, when it wasn't that they were going to be fired. You just don't hire. But they use this fake narrative. And again, it's not the workers. The workers are being convinced by their union reps. This is what we saw here in the auto industry and in the steel and aluminum industry and all of that Eastern vote. This is why they voted Liberal. It was lies being told from Liberal supporters within their organizations, who are their union reps, that all they care about is themselves. They don't actually look logistically at the future of the company and keeping that company alive. Without the company, You're useless, people. You're useless. There comes a time where, yes, you have to stand up for your rights and say, hey, whoa, 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 you're making record profits and I'm making nothing. That's fair. But you don't crush the company. You don't bite the hand that feeds you, because then you both go down. In which we're seeing here.
Earlier this week, Honda Canada announced that it was suspending construction on about $15 billion worth of EV assembly plants in southwestern Ontario. Understandably, Ontario Premier Doug Ford was enraged by this. He said he was going to hold Honda accountable. And he should. Because about half of the $15 billion came from the federal government and his provincial government. There's a lot of taxpayer billions in those suspended plants. But then Ford went on and he said, this is because of Donald Trump's tariffs.
No.
And in a sense, I guess there's a little bit of truth to that. I mean, Trump is an idiot. There's no denying that. And his trade policies go back to about the 17th century when they weren't working then either.
Okay, so he's absolutely wrong about what he's saying right now. Trump has created more jobs in 6 months. He has guaranteed and created more jobs in 6 months than any other president in the history of the USA. All the talk of inflation was all lies. Inflation's going down. Everything that the mainstream media has been saying about him has been wrong. Yes, as a Canadian, Trump is a dick because he doesn't care about Canada. He don't care. He's hired to do one job and one job only. And that is to make America great again. And he is doing just that. So everybody's got a little bit of bias. So he's right on a lot of what he's saying, but he's also wrong because he's using his own personal hate to justify what he just said, which is wrong. It's wrong.
So Ford, there's a little bit of truth in what Ford says, that tariffs are responsible for Honda not wanting to finish these plants because they're worried Canadian-made cars will be too expensive when they're transported into the United States. There's a little bit of truth in that. But here's the kicker. Earlier this week, too, Stats Canada came out with sales figures for automobiles in Canada for March. Not quite 200,000 cars and light trucks were sold in Canada in March. And how many EVs? Well, in the previous month, about 12,000 had been sold. Fully electric vehicles. In March, about 6,000 were sold. The federal subsidy of $5,000 per car ended in January. It carried on a little bit into February with holdovers and hangovers and all that sort of stuff. But by March, there were no longer any federal rebates, and there are no rebates in Ontario for buying electric cars. The market simply dropped out because there was no longer any government subsidy for the electric vehicles. And that's why Honda's not selling them. It's because the market has collapsed. There's no market for EVs in the United States. There's no market for EVs here. Okay, there's a small market. Toronto, Montreal, a little bit in Ottawa and Vancouver. There are some people who want to buy EVs. But in the rest of the country, the distances are too vast. The costs are too high. And there's 6 or 7 months of winter. And EVs don't work well in winter. The reason that Doug Ford is mad is that he did the same dumb thing that Justin Trudeau did. He went all in on EVs. He believed the federal government when they said there would be no vehicles sold with internal combustion engines in Canada after 2035. And by this year, 20% were supposed to be EVs, and they're supposed to move up to 60 to 65% by 2030, and then 100% by 2035. It's not going to happen. And Ford and his government pumped all those billions into building EV battery plants and EV assembly plants to try and bring in all these great new green jobs. And what's happened? Without the federal incentives to buy EVs, the market is showing you what the market is for EVs. And it's about half what it was under the subsidies.
Now, he's correct, but he's not correct. Even with the subsidies in rollout, between June and December of last year, the EV market was in free fall. Because people had already come to realize that they're a mistake. And he's right in saying that in cities, for the most part, highly densely populated cities, where you're very close to your amenities, things are done in short routes, the EVs were kind of holding their own. But for the rest of Canada, a year ago, they started realizing this wasn't working. And then 6 months ago, 8 months ago, it was already in free fall. Then the subsidy kicked out, and the people in the cities, who are the largest purchasers, stopped buying, which gave it the final hockey stick blow. So again, grain of salt. You've got to take everything with a grain of salt. Now, we have some leaked document here. The Canadian military. This shouldn't surprise anybody. That's left of it. Canadian military report shows many new recruits are quickly leaving. Now, it's again, I'm right. I'm sorry, I hate saying that, but I said this, I think 2 episodes ago I was talking about this. They don't want to stay. I know people personally. I actually have a lot of people on different social media, like TikTok and others, that they talk to me and they say, I was in the military, I'm leaving, I'm getting the hell out of there. This place is woke. It's crazy. I will not go to war with this person beside me, or these people, or this for a captain, or like, there's no way. They have no faith at all in what has become our military. Attrition rate for new recruits more than double the average across the forces. The Canadian military insists it's getting a handle on its recruiting crisis, but a new leaked internal report obtained by CBC News suggests many of those who come through the door quickly leave in frustration over the inability to get trained and into the job they want. In addition, the effort to retain experienced soldiers, sailors, and air crew was dealt an important blow recently when a Department of National Defense office set up to find ways to keep people was defunded. The struggle to recruit new members to both the regular and the reserve forces has been a major preoccupation as the Canadian Armed Forces face a shortage of up to 14,000 qualified personnel. But the flip side of the equation that has gotten less attention is the effort to hold on to people, especially in critical technical trades. According to the evaluation obtained by CBC News, the military's biggest retention problem appears to be among those who've just joined. The highest attrition rates within the Canadian Armed Forces are observed among its lowest ranks and newest members, said the reports, which pointed to the 2023-2024 fiscal year where 9.4% of the newly enrolled members quit, as opposed to 4.3% average across all the CAF. The reason new members are quitting: training delays and difficult adjusting to military life. In some cases, recruits are waiting 206 days for training, notably in specialized trades. There is insufficient trainers, equipment, training facilities, and other supports to meet training targets effectively, said the report. This leads to delays, which significantly frustrates new members who often face months of under-deployment. Now, this goes on and on and on and on. As always, I post everything. I think I'm the only guy who posts everything in the description. Not only to make sure that you're seeing I'm giving you the facts. Sorry, just the facts. But also so you guys can go down and click on it and either watch the video or read the document in its entirety. Because that's what media should do. The news should be there to inform you, to educate you. That's the main job. That is the job. Now, we're going to move on. This was brought to you by your tax dollars, funneled through the SDTC Green Slush Fund. And it is just another proof, just more proof, another business showing you that this entire green slush fund, all this green agenda was bad business. And I'm going to do some digging on the investors on this, because there was billions of dollars handed out by the government.
A May 6 order from the Toronto Superior Court of Justice placed Aspire Food Group in the hands of receiver FTI Consulting Canada. The decision was based on a filing from Farm Credit Canada, a Crown corporation which reported Aspire had debts of more than $41 million. But one agri-food expert doesn't think this needs to be the end of Aspire.
I think this plant needs to survive because there is potential there. You can actually do a lot of things with crickets.
Professor Sylvain Charlebois is director of the Agri-Food Analytics Lab at Dalhousie University and co-host of the Food Professor podcast. He feels there is a market for cricket proteins.
You can actually do a lot of things with crickets. You can actually produce fertilizer for lawns, for plants, and obviously I'm thinking about the food supply chain and producing nutrients and feed for livestock in particular.
Aspire was formed by 5 McGill University students in 2013. They won a prize of $1 million US awarded for business ideas that solve pressing social issues. But Professor Charlebois believes company leadership missed the mark on marketing and business strategies.
Frankly, we see it all the time in business is often people are creators, they're innovators, but they're not necessarily good managers.
Still, Charlebois believes there's a way forward for the London plant under new management, noting that cricket production is inexpensive and can be achieved with far lower greenhouse gas emissions than other protein sources.
And it is a state-of-the-art plant, and to convert that plant into doing anything else would be extremely difficult and expensive.
Aspire also has a research and development arm in Austin, Texas. The London operation was opened in 2022. In November, leadership reported that staffing in London was cut from 150 employees to 50, with the goal of rehiring in July. A dozen vehicles were in the parking lot of the plant on Tuesday morning. We reached out to the receiver for information on the status of operations, but as of news time, hadn't received a response. Jerry DeWan.
Yeah. Now, this has been failed from the get-go. Their main, I guess, source, what they were trying to push through, even though you heard it on TV being, brainwashed to you, was how they're, eat crickets, eat crickets, eat crickets, eat crickets. Bugs are the way of the future. Get away from beef. Bugs are the way of the future. It's the green way to go. It's all bullshit. As a dog food supplement, okay, because it's high in protein. But there is a chemical found in bugs that doesn't go well with not just humans but dogs and cats as well. So as a mild supplement, okay. But this business right from the get-go, how it was set up wrong. And there's some documentation that's come out proving that not only was it completely mishandled, they were basing all of this, and they got their grant from the Green Slush Fund because they used this terminology on how it was a guaranteed, they had a perfect system running in Texas, and this is what we're following, or Tennessee or whatever, and it's guaranteed to work. And why didn't it work if it was so guaranteed? There should be an investigation into this, and we need to find out who are the people sitting on the board, and and how much did they make in bonuses. How much of that Green Slush Fund was laundered through this failed business? Unbelievable. Just unbelievable. Well, you guys, I'm going to call that an episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And if you're new, make sure you punch that notification bell so you don't miss any future episodes. Until next time, I'm Alias to Guy. You've been watching the Canadian Citizen Journal. Stay informed.